With the launch of the Switch 2, is Nintendo's console curse finally over? For those that don't know, Nintendo had kind of a weird history of console releases over the past several years. That being, every other console seems to not sell very well. While the NES and Super NES had very good sales, the window when looking at Nintendo's console curse generally starts at the N64. Now, in my opinion, the N64 did very well for the time at 33 million units sold. It has a ton of memorable games, and many of the legendary IPs that Nintendo has today made their starting point on the N64. But, while the GameCube also has a similar reputation of being an amazing console, the sales don't actually reflect that at all. In one of my previous videos, I go into detail about how the GameCube didn't actually sell as well as people thought it did, and it really gains its legendary console status years after its production. But with the release of the Wii, things had turned around for Nintendo's console sales. With the innovation of motion controls that were better than any other console that tried to do the same, the Wii really pushed the boundaries of what a console could do and what companies should be doing when it comes to advancements for following console iterations. Now, unfortunately, coming off the back of the sales of the Wii, totaling at 101 million units sold, the Wii U almost undid all the progress and success that the Wii had created. Now, even though the Wii U didn't sell very well, I do think it had a lot of capabilities and boundaries that still seem to be pushed with Nintendo's innovation. Essentially, it was a portable device that played Wii games and could be played in sync with your existing Wii. But in my opinion, I think it really came down to poor marketing because a lot of people didn't and still don't know exactly what the Wii U was and the full extent of its capabilities. So maybe for one of my next videos, I'll do a deep dive into what the Wii U was and look at why its success wasn't there at all. In total, the Wii U sold just under 14 million units, which, coming off the back of the success of the Wii, was pretty pitiful and actually was a pinnacle moment for Nintendo. This was because their next console had to be incredible to say the least. And it was rumored that if Nintendo's next console didn't sell well, they would have gotten out of the console game altogether. Now, with the success of the Switch, we see that this wasn't the case at all, and in my opinion, the Switch and Nintendo's console game is still alive and thriving. The Nintendo Switch combined the Wii's motion control capabilities and the renowned success when it comes to creating a handheld. Performance aside, I really do think that the Switch is as close as you can get when creating the perfect console. Especially coming from someone who loves handheld gaming just as much as gaming on a console. All in all, the Switch 1 sold 152 million units, which is the third highest selling console / handheld of all time, just behind the Nintendo DS at 154 million units, which is only 2 million less than that. And at number 1 you have the PlayStation 2 at 160 million units. And fun fact about the PS2, it was one of the major reasons why the GameCube didn't sell well. Now, with the announcement and launch of the Switch 2, there are a ton of mixed feelings and opinions about Nintendo's next console iteration, namely because of the price of the console and more so the price of the games. There was a lot of backlash and people boycotting the Switch 2. However, despite all the mixed opinions and outrage from a lot of people, the Switch 2 became the fastest selling console of all time, selling 3.5 million units in just 4 days. The Switch 2 was expected to sell 15 million units by the end of the year, and in just 4 days it sold 23% of that. To compare this to the Switch 1 sales, I'm not saying the Switch 2 is going to outsell that, but I definitely don't think it's going to flop, and in my opinion it's probably going to get pretty close to those numbers if not surpass it altogether. The Switch 2 has a handful of games out right now, a lot of them being third-party games like Cyberpunk and Yakuza, with many more to come. But the only new exclusive for the Switch 2 out right now is Mario Kart World. This isn't including any Switch 1 games that have been brought over to the Switch 2. There's a ton of controversy with the Switch 2 regarding the price, but like I said, more so the price of Mario Kart World, which is the first game to be priced at $80. Rightfully so in my opinion, because this is a big hike from the regular $70 price of games that we see, and Switch 1 games that were originally $60. However, the sales of the Switch 2 have a lot to do with Mario Kart World. As it stands right now, Mario Kart 8 is the 5th highest selling game of all time, at 76.6 million units sold. So it's no wonder why the Switch 2 sold so well, with Mario Kart being the launch title for the console. Fun fact though, Wii Sports is actually number 3 on that list at 83 million units sold. I do think the number of Switch 2s will plateau for now, as it seems that they're having issues restocking all the high demand from consumers. But to kind of put it in perspective, the PS5 fell in the same boat as it only launched with a few exclusives and took over a year to get product regularly in stores, similar to how the Switch 2 is right now. And in my opinion, the PS5 was a wild success for PlayStation, and I don't see the Switch 2 being any different. Now, I'm only bringing this up because there's a handful of people that I saw online that wanted to compare the Switch to the Steam Deck, saying stuff like, why would you buy a Switch when the Steam Deck is so much better? And while the Steam Deck has only sold around 4 million units, it's kind of hard to compare the two in my opinion. The Steam Deck, while very good for PC players who also enjoy handheld gaming, I do think it's a very niche device that many Nintendo consumers either don't want or they don't even know what it is. With those that just want to plug in a game and play, I doubt they want to go through all the hoops of having to install emulators and download games and set the whole thing up. So like I said, even though I enjoy the Steam Deck and I think it's a cool device, I think it's hard to compare the two in this situation alone. Besides Mario Kart though, I do think that there are other factors that play into the success of the Switch 2. A lot of people wanted a Switch that was better than the Switch 1, and Nintendo delivered. Personally, I have a first generation Switch, and I'll definitely be buying a 2 just off the fact that it runs better and performs way better than the Switch 1. And honestly, the Switch 2 is exactly what it needs to be. It's a more powerful and premium feeling than its predecessor, and I think its only downside that I've heard so far might just be the battery life. Overall though, I think the console itself is pretty fairly priced. Besides the games being the major controversy, I think what you're getting for the price is fair. However, along with the price of the games, the other thing that I don't like is some games have key cards rather than actual physical games. Key cards essentially being physical cartridges with no actual game data on them, and everything is downloaded online straight to your Switch. Now there's pros and cons to this, but I think for someone who likes physical games, I have mixed feelings about it. But I think I'd rather just have physical games rather than having to download every single one. While Switch exclusive games are going to be the primary driver for game sales, there's a large library of third-party games coming to the Switch, and I think it primarily deals with these games finally being able to be played on a Nintendo console that can handle them. But unfortunately, these third-party sales haven't been doing so well since the release of the Switch 2, and in my opinion it's no wonder, because most of the people are not going to want to pay $70 for a game they either already own, or they can find them regularly on sale for another console or on Steam. But the Switch 2 also has some other cool features like the GameCube Virtual Console, which I'm super excited for and can't wait to see the other games added to this catalog. But overall, when it comes to the sales of the Switch 2, and however you feel about it, there's a large number of people out there who just like the Switch. It's a good console, and to be honest, the Switch is unlike any other console we've seen before. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that just bought the Switch 2 just because they can, namely adults, where they just want a new toy to play with and they have the money to buy it. But unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people online and in person being very unsupportive about the Switch, and they're right to have their opinions. But I think the sales of the Switch 2 reflect the opposite, with the silent majority being the biggest buyers versus the vocal minority making the biggest outcry. But regardless of how you feel about the Switch 2, or any console or any video game, I don't think people should be shamed in buying what they want and supporting what they like. People should be able to enjoy gaming how they want to. Everyone has their own style of how they like to play. Everyone has their own genre of games they like to play. While I don't like first-person shooters, I don't think people should be shamed for still buying Call of Duty just because I don't like the direction the game is going. So play games how you want, and don't let others dictate your opinion. Definitely do your own research and see if the Switch 2 is right for you, or any game or any console for that matter. But what's most important is to have fun gaming, because that's what video games are there for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.